Resident Evil 4 had a troubled development history. Initially envisioned as a fixed camera Demon Slayer which eventually became Devil May Cry, then a more visually appealing classic Resident Evil, it finally saw release in 2005 for the GameCube and PlayStation 2, and in 2007 for the PC and Wii. We'll be taking a look at the Ultimate HD Edition, which was released in 2012 for the Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3, and finally in 2014 for PC. In Resident Evil 4 you play as Leon Kennedy, whom despite having survived the Raccoon City outbreak, seems to have not realized that getting out of the action might be a good idea. You are tasked with rescuing the president's daughter, last seen in a remote Spanish village. At first, the area seems like just another quaint rural area, only for shit to hit the fan within minutes. The first person Leon meets tries to kill him, and a group of villagers murders Leon's escort. Add in a strange cult, familiar faces, and some new interesting characters, and you have a recipe for a strong, compelling story that will keep you hooked. Resident Evil 4 might offer a different perspective and twists on series staples, but in reality this is still Resident Evil. Your inventory and resources are still limited, enemies are still menacing, and the areas you traverse are still mostly tight. But it's these twists that really help the game come into its own. The briefcase system is a noticeable improvement over the illogical inventory system of old, as it takes into account item size and even allows you to move things around. Though it would have been nice if the game mentioned you can rotate items by using the page down key. Still, it gives plenty of room for all your items, and better yet, keys and treasures do not occupy any room at all. There's even a traveling merchant in certain areas of the map where you can buy new weapons, ammo, healing items, and upgrades, and even sell treasures or equipment you don't need. It's not very well explained by the story, but he's so convenient you won't really care. P.S. Only buy upgrades for the last weapons you unlock, as the newer guns are superior to even their upgraded predecessors. Also, while aiming is done from a third-person perspective and the universal laser sight ensures absolute accuracy, you can't move while aiming and enemies can dodge quite well. Realistically, it makes sense that you would be at your most accurate while standing still, and if nothing else you can equip your knife instantly to buy a few precious seconds. Ultimately, the systems in play do a great job at modernizing survival horror. Better yet, the bosses are still as challenging as they were in the previous games. Expect having to use continues upon meeting them. However, the best strategy for most enemies is to shoot them in the head, roundhouse kick them like a discount Chuck Norris, then use your knife on them while they're down. Sure, the game does use a combination of static items and randomly generated drops to ensure decent chances of survival, but in a pinch, saving up resources doesn't hurt. In fact, while a modern game in look and feel, Resident Evil 4 is a hard game. It doesn't take many mistakes to see the continue screen, and mistakes will happen. To a certain extent, it could even be argued that Resident Evil 4 is harder than the previous games, since the original trilogy offered auto-aim and typically no more than 2 or 3 enemies in any encounter. Also, despite turning into an occasional escort mission 1/4 through, Ashley is arguably one of the most enjoyable VIPs to protect. Not only can you tell her to hide in containers and closets, but you can even order her to wait or follow, and unlike other buffoons, she actually listens. Even better, whenever there are zombies in the way, she knows to go right behind you so as to not obstruct your aim, and even if she is waiting patiently, she will know to duck whenever you aim in her direction, though ideally she should be either following you or hiding in safety. She can be captured or killed, but can also be healed if necessary, and finally, whenever you call her out of hiding, she will come as close to you as possible without getting stuck on walls or any such nonsense. Escort missions have a deservedly bad rap in games, and the fact that some still get it wrong today when Resident Evil 4 does it mostly well is just baffling. The execution here is quite good, and an example of how just a few minor details can turn something maligned into a mostly compelling challenge. Once you finish the main game, you can also engage in some fun distractions like the Separate Ways mini-campaign, the Assignment Ada mission, and of course, Mercenaries Mode. Completing these unlocks bonuses, with a particularly useful one being revealed once you've achieved 5 stars with each character on each map in Mercenaries Mode. In all fairness, Mercenaries difficulty is downright masochistic at times, but if nothing else, it makes completing the main game on the professional difficulty possible, encourages mastery of the mechanics, and adds further length to a game whose main campaign already takes anywhere from 15 to 20 hours. The value proposition here, particularly for an action game, is downright unmatched. Resident Evil 4 was something of a tech demo when it was released in 2005. Back when most games had characters with mitten hands and low-res texture-laden environments, here comes a game with detailed high-res textures and models that have separate fingers and in-game lip sync. While the HD edition doesn't suddenly make the game's presentation next-gen, it does help keep what made the original such a looker in the day. Even better, the PC version has multiple graphical options available, and most importantly, a 60 FPS option. On that note, however, while the Ultimate HD Edition is a far cry from the lazy, sloppy mess that was the original PC port, it's still not an ideal conversion. While keyboard and mouse play is a viable option thanks to rebinding and proper icons, the game has mouse acceleration that can't be turned off in any way. In fact, the default modern control type makes it downright unplayable. The game doesn't use the number keys or the mouse wheel either, which means changing weapons requires going in and out of your briefcase constantly. There is gamepad support for those inclined, but it's still a shame that even the Ultimate version doesn't get PC controls quite right. Resident Evil 4 is modern survival horror done right. This is a tense game with an interesting story and an excellent presentation. It's challenging and intelligent, and if you've put off playing it, your patience is rewarded with the definitive edition of a lengthy, compelling adventure.